Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and we just got some new leaks for the 10th generation of Pokémon, supposedly a Switch 2 exclusive that is coming out next year for the 30th anniversary for the series, and from what we've been hearing, this is going to be the most ambitious Pokémon game yet, and by far. Now for those who have not been keeping up to date, these leaks are coming from the Terra leak, and more has come out there. People have been looking into some data mines of this information and extrapolating a bit more details on Generation 10 of Pokemon. And what has been found is very, very interesting. It suggests a very expansive, varied world. So that's what we're getting into today. Now, quick disclaimer, lately I've been focusing a lot on Metroid Prime 4, and I'm preparing for Metroid Prime 4 to come out later this week. There's a lot I'm going to be doing in terms of covering that game, obviously playing it as well, so there's some time constraints with this particular video, so it's going to be a lot more simply and quickly done, but I wanted to talk about all this new information regarding a huge game that probably is indeed coming out next year. So this information was made privy to me by this Universal Nintendo article written by Necrofelipe Lima. I will have it linked in the description below. But there's a lot of things that are explained from these data mines that are, again, very, very interesting. But keep in mind, this project, codenamed Gaia, what the data miners have been looking at here is coming from an internal 2023 build. In other words, while it is totally believed that these are indeed 100% real leaks, that is from a couple years ago. So plans can change, they can go in a slightly different direction, so what we're hearing about here may not show up exactly the same when the final game comes out. But here's a quick summary for those who haven't heard the prior leaks regarding Generation 10. This is going to be a Switch 2 exclusive coming out next year, and its setting is an island region inspired by Southeast Asia. The game is supposed to be open world with both land and underwater exploration. There's also supposedly going to be procedurally generated islands, and there's supposed to be a whole bunch of cool weather effects and such. I actually remember seeing footage from these leaks that were taken down showing them using some of the new rendering techniques with the engine they're working on with both wind and wave effects. Oh, and by the way, supposedly these games are going to be called Pokémon Winds and Pokémon Waves. But with this latest information, what has been found in these files is that there are W zones, like W01 or 02, and it appears these W zones are supposed to be big island areas. Like, one in particular is supposed to have a huge port city with a hotel, bridges, cruise ship, a port area, and there's a big suggestion there's going to be a lot of aquatic travel. But also within these files, there have been things found like T01, T02, T03, and these are believed to be different villages, which would include tree houses, plazas, gazebos, and other varying points of interest, including a relic tower. This seems to be some sort of trial, and some have speculated that it might be somewhat related to the trials we saw in Pokemon Sun and Moon. What's interesting about that to me is that the more and more I look into this game is seeming more and more like a open world, more ambitious, more evolved version of Pokemon Sun and Moon, because Pokemon Sun and Moon had islands, but you couldn't traverse through the oceans or go underwater or fly around really that much. But there were ride Pokemon, and there were these totem challenges, and the islands were pretty expansive, at least compared to prior Pokemon games at the time. And so it almost seems like this might be a little bit of a spiritual successor, at least from what we've heard so far. Continuing on though, we've heard about how there's going to be different ways to commute or travel around. There's even talk of there being cable cars, which would take you from one mountainous area to another, suggesting that there are going to be some regions that have a great deal of verticality. And on that note, from what's been found, it seems like there's going to be a lot of different biomes. There's going to be a desert area, volcano area, jungle and rainforest areas, caves, beaches, and cliffs. Like, there's going to be a lot of variety to the different islands. But perhaps what excites me the most about this leak, because you could kind of maybe assume something along these lines from the prior leaks, is this talk of there being enhanced mounts. So some information has been found that there may be some form of 3D checkpoints or different effects suggesting that there's going to be some form of racing around, which sounds like a fun little minigame that they may be placing into this experience. But there's also a lot of speed, fire, water, and thunder effects, and also there's a lot of new movement animations, like when you're riding around on these different Pokemon, you can jump, glide, fly, and dive, and even Charizard has a dive animation here. I assume it doesn't mean Charizard will be diving underwater, but in this case, Charizard will be diving through the air. And so what this suggests is that you're going to be able to use a lot more Pokemon to ride around in a more dynamic fashion, more so than any other prior Pokemon game. And so that bodes extremely well for the level of exploration we may have in this game. So imagine an open world Pokemon game where you can use different Pokemon to explore around different environments, like a volcano area. Maybe there are some Pokemon that can swim through lava. Maybe there are some Pokemon that can take you underwater, some Pokemon that you can fly from one island to another. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they had Miraidon and Koraidon that could do a lot of that as just themselves, but imagine if you could just use a different Pokemon, one Pokemon of your choosing, or different kinds for different situations within this massive open world that is seemingly even more expansive than what we saw for Sun and Moon, with there being various islands that some of which may be pretty big with multiple villages, giant cities, and more. And if we also consider what we heard about the prior leaks of this game, that there's also going to be some procedurally generated islands, so there may be even more areas to find and explore, and you can sort of come back to continually find more different unique areas. There may be a great deal of content when it comes to exploring around the world of the 10th generation of Pokemon. But beyond riding Pokemon, there's also some mention of there being different vehicles like scooters you can take around different towns or urban areas. Now, there are references found for Charizard, Pikachu, Gyarados, Tropius, Shinx, Luxray, Lucario, Lumineon, Sandygast, Copperajah, Snom, and more. So there have been different Pokemon already found there. There is supposedly a laboratory island for W50. It's speculated that this island is being used for just internal testing. Like, there are elements of there being a jungle, a beach, a volcano, a cave, different wind effects, hidden items, different spawns, and other open world mechanics. But basically, my ultimate takeaway from everything we've heard so far about Pokemon Winds and Waves, if that is indeed what they end up being called, is that this experience is going to feel like a far more ambitious, far more expansive version of Pokemon Sun and Moon, where you'll have some massive islands, you'll be able to explore between islands seamlessly, go underwater, fly through the air with all kinds of different Pokemon, with a lot more unique animations, and this is going to be a far vaster world with a lot more to do. And we've also heard this is supposed to be in a new engine, and if it is indeed going to be a Switch 2 exclusive, that gives us a lot of room for optimism here that this is going to be a significant leap in terms of visual fidelity, details, performance compared to prior Pokemon games, by a substantial margin. We're jumping to new hardware and using a new engine, which has been an issue for a lot of the last few generations of Pokemon games, where they've tried to make everything work with their current engine, and so it looks like they're finally updating things, and that could lead to some significant improvements and perhaps go a long ways towards minimizing a lot of the criticisms and concerns a lot of Pokemon fans have had over the last few generations. Fingers crossed. But that's basically what we've heard from all the latest leaks. Now, if you've gone this far into the video, basically at the very end of the video, I appreciate you watching all this time, and I'll simply point out that I do have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so your subscription would be greatly appreciated. But with that all said, let me know what you all think in the comments below. This is AndresRestart, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.